All right, this is the video for Module 36. So far in class, we talked about Module 35, which was Macroeconomic Theory, where we looked at classical economists, we looked at Keynesian, we looked at monetarists, we looked at New Classical and New Keynesian. Module 36 does mention supply-side economics. The idea of supply-side economics kind of took hold in the 70s and 80s. The reason that I didn't include it on the chart was that there hasn't been really any proof that it actually works. But generally the idea behind it was that if you give tax cuts, it will increase incentives to work harder, and there will be more investment, and it will cause economic growth and all this fun stuff. But like I said, there really hasn't been any proof in the pudding. So what about modern consensus about macroeconomics? Well, generally, one of the big things that is, and I have a question mark next to it because there's some things that they still argue about. Natural rate hypothesis is generally accepted. This idea that the unemployment rate must be at the natural rate or else it will lead to ever-increasing inflation. Remember this lovely chart where we looked at the Phillips curve and we talked about if they try to maintain that 3% unemployment rate, that it's going to lead to 2% inflation, which becomes expected in the future and built in the future, and then it goes up to 4% and so on and so on. Yeah, most economists agree with this. They agree that this is, yeah, you have to be at the natural rate, otherwise you're going to cause increasing inflation. The things that they disagree about, on the other hand, should the Fed have a formal guideline for inflation targeting? Some argue yes, some argue no. Some say that yes because it gives us stability and it gives us ideas of what we're doing. So that inflation targeting, some say yes, this is a good idea. Other people say that, you know what, that there's no flexibility in that. What happens if we have a recession and you're sticking to your inflation targeting? So there are some arguments about that. The other part is that should the Fed try to control asset prices like the stock market and housing market? This is a big deal, especially more recently with the 2008 crash. There was a lot of people that saw this coming, and they saw that there's this huge housing market bubble, and there was houses were way overinflated. Some people said the Fed should have done something about it. Should they get involved, and should they actually control asset prices or things like stock prices when stocks get way out of control? In the late 90s, the stock market was booming, and then all of a sudden we had this kind of crash. Should they control that? Some people say that it's not a good idea because it's don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. And other people say, hey, they should, because if it does crash, it makes it that much harder to be able to fix the problems that it makes. So that's kind of some arguments that current economists have. So, for example, like I said, the housing market crash, this was in 2008. You can see this huge drop in the percentage change the year earlier. So the last thing is that should the Fed buy private assets and make loans to any financial institution? This was a solution that the Fed came up with in 2008 because they were under the liquidity trap where the interest rate was already up against the zero bound. They could not drop interest rates any lower, so they were trying to be creative. So they bought some private assets, meaning they bought some stock in individual banks, and they made loans to financial institutions that were not banks, so some hedge funds, for example. And some people said yes, they needed to do that because they were against the liquidity trap. Other people said, hey, wait, whoa, you're going too far. So again, as low as you can go, again, it was because of this liquidity trap. These lines down here were showing you that the interest rates were pretty much at zero. Okay, and then these were bond rates, so at the time. So that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions.